Hi guys, welcome back. We're here to catch up on The Lost Bookshop, and I'm excited because it's getting super good. I'm trying to fix the pillows on the bed so I can have something kind of lean on. Okay, so let's do another one. Okay. We left off on page 243, chapter 32, Martha. I woke before dawn. I had tossed and turned all night, and it sounded like the house had too. Something caught my eye in the morning gloom, the ceiling. I reached over to turn on my bedside lamp and looked up. Where the light pendant used to be at the center of the room were now roots. A knot of tiny tendrils was growing out of the hole in the ceiling like a chandelier. I stared at them for a while until all I could see was their intricate beauty. Each root was made up of tiny, smaller roots which broke into smaller roots again, all playing a vital role. Suspended, they seemed to search the air for something of value to nourish them. I wanted to reach out and touch them, but jumped when my alarm rang. I feel like I'm going to vomit. I stood behind Madame Bound, brushing her hair as she sat regally at her dressing table. The room was gloomy as she kept the curtains closed to the cold gray morning. Today would be my first day as a student in Trinity, albeit an evening class in literature. And I was, frankly, shitting myself. Dry toast. I thought that was for pregnancy. Good God, you're not pregnant, are you? Of course not. I stole a glance at her reflection in the mirror. It's strange how people can look so different in a mirror. The features seem to shift around like shadows as the sun passes overhead. Listen to me, Martha. If you're not scared, then you're not living. I wasn't sure I wanted a weird pep talk at the moment, but it was what I got. I pursed my lips, gave her a withering look, and hurried downstairs to make us both some toast before I set off. My mind was frazzled and full of doubts. What if I humiliated myself by not knowing anything? Would I make any friends or end up sitting alone for the entire term? What if? The thoughts were endless. Where had the feeling of strength from the other night disappeared to? Why did my life always feel like 2 steps forward then 3 back? I grabbed my jacket and my new backpack from the hook in the hallway and stopped short by the spot where Shane had tumbled over the banister. I reached out and touched the wooden newel post. It felt smooth and solid under my hands. I tried to breathe deeply into my belly like that yoga girl on YouTube said. Apparently it helped to calm anxious thoughts. I counted 1, 2, 3. The house creaked softly and I closed my eyes for a moment. I had an image of a cradle being gently rocked in a bow. Madame Bound's words returned to me. If you're not scared, you're not living. Up to now, I had never associated fear with anything positive. But maybe there was different kinds of fear. There's only one way to find out. My eyes flew open wide. She was there again, sneaking up on me. What? You're going to miss your bus at this rate. Now shoo. I didn't move and looked at her with pleading eyes. What if I can't do it? What if everyone else is smarter than me? I don't recall you having any doubts about your abilities to work here, and frankly, you were mediocre at the start. Thanks, that really helps, I replied flatly. She pursed her lips and sighed heavily. Tell me, the book you've been reading in the kitchen when you think I'm not looking. Normal People? Yes, that one. Do you like it? I considered her question. It wasn't at all what I expected. I don't know if I liked it as such, but I couldn't stop reading it. Conwell and Marianne had also come to feel like real people to me. I was completely invested in their lives. It's good because I feel like I'm a fly on the wall watching everything happen. And I like that Connell is a country boy applying to Trinity. I smiled. So, the characters are relatable. Yes, that's it. But I get so angry with Marianne. I mean, why would she let people treat her that way? Maybe she thinks she deserves it. The realization was cold and hard. Even I couldn't see why someone would feel so unlovable that they'd accept abuse. I'd been uncomfortable reading her story all along, but at the same time, I felt like I wasn't going through this alone. If it could happen to someone like Marianne, who was wealthy and intelligent, it could happen to anyone. I think it's easy to get confused about what love is and when you're young is when you're young. Even the title kind of suggests that we normalize bad behavior in relationships, or assume that being normal is the most important thing. So we hide all the ugly stuff that happens to us. I mean, who even is normal anyway? Congratulations, you've just delivered your first critical review of a book. Now off you go and no more of this nonsense. As I walked down the steps of 12 Ha'penny Lane, I looked back to see her fading reflection in the glass of the living room window. That was how it was when I tried to read her. She was always obscured by the light rather than illuminated by it. Like an overexposed photograph. She was unlike anyone I'd ever met, and maybe that was a good thing. Chapter 33, Henry. The air felt different somehow as I got off the bus in O'Connell Street. They say you can never enter the same river twice, and maybe the same was true of countries. The streets were busy, full of people with purpose, as was I. Walking up the steps of number 12, I took a moment to straighten my jacket and grip the envelope with the letter I'd printed out. I couldn't wait to tell her about Opaline, Sylvia, the book. I tapped the knocker with a firm but not overly assertive force. It's the little things. Oh, well, you did knock, replied Madame Bound. Shall I simply close the door again and we can pretend this never happened? No, sorry, Yes? I was expecting to see Martha, that's all. Oh, were you? Despite the fact that you left without a word, you expected the girl to be awaiting your return? Perhaps with a hanky dabbing her moistened eyes? No, of course not. I was completely flustered. Well then, you can walk back the way you came, and we'll say no more about it. No. Now, hang on. I left a note. Did she get it? I felt a bit panicked. She does still live here? The old lady sighed and rolled her eyes as though I were a puppy soiling her carpet. Oh, I suppose you might as well come through. You're here now. She stood back and I stepped inside, slightly annoyed at, well, everything. This wasn't going how I'd planned. I'm afraid you'll have to fend for yourself if you want tea, she said, arranging herself on the cream sofa with sprays of flowers forming guard on side tables at each end. Of course, we could always forego the niceties and head straight for the brandy. She nodded towards a little drinks caddy by the fireplace, and I poured us 2 healthy measures of amber liquid. So why have you returned? Hang on, how do you know who I am? Oh, please, let's not delude ourselves. She told me about you, the scholar chasing after a lost bookshop. I wasn't sure what she saw in you, but now I can see you in person, she said, adjusting her spectacles. I suppose I can see a certain boyish charm. Is that what attracted your fiancé, Mr. Field? God, she really had told her everything. Do men like you ever realize the hurt you cause? Flitting in and out of people's lives? No, I suppose not. That would require some sort of intellect. It appeared that no response was required from me. I was simply to bear witness to my own character assassination by a woman I had just met. And the worst part was that she was terrifyingly accurate in her summation. Except for one thing. I love her. How do you know? Sorry? What is it that you love about Martha? Is it how she makes you feel about yourself? Does she boost your... She let her eyes fall here. Flaccid ego? Is that it? Did you get some kind of pleasure out of having 2 women on the go? I know you're tight, Mr. Field, and let me tell you, my Martha is worth 10 of you. No, you see, that's what I've been trying to tell her. The night we kissed, I knew I had to end things with Isabel. But I owed her more than a phone call. I had to go back to London straight away and explain. I felt ridiculous explaining myself to a complete stranger, but I could see how much she cared for Martha, and that gave us common ground. I've been trying to call Martha ever since, but she must have disconnected her number. My sister just had a baby, and that delayed my return here, but I got back as soon as I could. She seemed to be considering what I had said, and it seemed like an age before she spoke again. Much has transpired since you last saw her. I'm not sure she'll want to see you. Please, Madame Bound, you're right. I've never known or understood what it really means to love or be loved. I'm not going to blame my past, but we all have one, and it follows us around like a prison, always keeping us from the person we truly wish to be. Martha is the bravest person I've ever met, and she's inspired what little bravery I have inside to listen to my heart for once. I don't just love her for how she makes me feel. I love her because when she came into my life, it was like the lights came on. Everything suddenly had meaning, and I hope, it was the same for her. We all have crap parts and good parts inside, but when you meet someone who makes you realize that it's all okay, you think, what in God's name did I do to deserve it? All of my life I've been searching for hidden treasure, fortunes outside of myself. But Martha, she found them in me. I'm not perfect by any means, but I know I want to spend the rest of my life making her smile. So I'm damned if I will let her go without a fight. She swallowed audibly. I was almost shaking with the conviction I felt in that moment. For the first time, I had heard myself speak the truth straight from my heart, and it sounded as clear and bright as a bell. After a pause, she raised her glass and with a grin clinked it against mine. You might just do, I suppose. Thank you. I know Martha is still married, but the look on her face made me stall my glass midair. You might want to take a seat. Chapter 34, Opaline, Dublin, 1923. Secrets are all very well and good, but having a fake name, a hidden pregnancy, a forgotten manuscript, and forbidden feelings were all making for a very complicated and lonely existence. What compounded my isolation was a constant background fear of Lyndon coming to take everything away from me. It felt as though I was only living a half-life, shrouded in subterfuge. Every time I looked at Emily's manuscript, which was often, I ruminated over the unfairness of my situation. The most amazing moment in my life, and I realized there wasn't a soul I could share it with. Perhaps I could trust Mr. Hannah, but how could I be sure he wouldn't let it slip to the wrong person? It was the loneliness I felt at that moment that spurred me to do something rash. I snatched a piece of paper from the drawer and wrote a hurried letter to Sylvia in Paris. I didn't want to take the usual precaution of sending it through Armand. It felt wonderful and exhilarating to rely on my news, and I knew she would not tell a soul without my consent. I'm going to be a mother, I wrote before signing off. Knowing that this would not be as exciting to her as the Bronte find, I told her to respond immediately, jotting down my phone number. I sealed the envelope and I left it on my desk until I found a chance to walk to the post box. Just knowing the excitement that Sylvia would share in my news gave me the strength to carry on with my day as normal and delay my decision on what action to take. I had a busy afternoon and found myself tearing easier than usual. A group of students stopped by looking for a publication by a pioneering new writer, Virginia Woolf. When I bent down to find a copy of Night and Day on the lower shelf, I felt faint. The atmosphere was heavy and humid, yet it wasn't until I was about to close the shop that fat raindrops began to splash on the footpath outside, turning it from gray to black. I was replacing some books and tidying the shelves when I heard the bell go. I was surprised to see Mr. Ravel standing at the door, his overcoat sparkling with raindrops. Mr. Ravel, what a lovely surprise. It was a lovely surprise, but I couldn't help wishing it had been Armand. Despite everything, I still hoped he would come back and find me, say it was all a big mistake and that he wanted us to be together after all. But here was a very nice man, and I was determined to at least pretend that I was moving forward. We kissed on both cheeks, and he asked, rather redundantly, if it was all right that he had stopped by unannounced. Well, of course it's all right. If people don't stop by unannounced, I'd have no customers at all, I said, ushering him inside. He took a moment to breathe in the atmosphere of the shop, then turned to me with a meaningful look. Mademoiselle Gray, your shop is like a treasure chest. Normally I batted any kind of compliments aside. It didn't do to court approval. Yet his words meant very much to me at that moment on many different levels. I offered to make some tea and left him to browse the shelves. As I carried the tray up the stairs from the kitchen, I called out to him. In fact, your timing couldn't be more perfect, Mr. Ravel. I'm celebrating some very exciting news. I thought perhaps we should be drinking champagne instead of tea, and was about to ask his opinion when I realized that the door was wide open. Rain pouring in and no trace of Mr. Ravel. I put the tray down on my desk and went to look up and down the street, but he was nowhere to be seen. I closed the door and shook my head, mystified. Then I glanced towards the desk and my heartbeat slowed, then speeded up. The letter I had addressed to Sylvia was gone. I searched the floor in case it had fallen, but it was nowhere to be seen. I covered my mouth with my hand, my breath ragged against my fingers. What had I written? The book? The baby? Who was Mr. Ravel? Was no one to be trusted now? Were they all working for my brother? I had to leave, and I had to do it quickly. It is strange how seemingly inconsequential conversations suddenly take on the mantle of fate and destiny when cast in a new light. I had been exchanging delightful letters with Mabel Harper, a woman who wrote an amusing column for the newspapers about her and her husband's life and travels. Her husband just happened to be none other than Lathrop Colgate Harper, a successful rare book dealer and authority on medieval manuscripts. She had suggested on numerous occasions that I travel to New York and visit infamous Book Row, and now that I had the money to do it, I decided to waste no time. I rushed out to the travel agency on D'Oyler Street and just made it before they closed. I booked my ticket for a crossing from Cobb to New York on the White Star Line 2 days hence. I would travel to Cork in the morning and stay overnight there before taking the tender out of the steamship bound for America. My hand shook as I signed the check, and the man behind the counter asked if I was quite well. I caught sight of my reflection in the window and saw a pale face with a hunted expression. I would not ignore my instincts this time. Lyndon had found me. Perhaps he had been intercepting my letters all along. After all, what use was Armand? He clearly had no loyalty to me. I left the office and headed straight for the bank. "What's happened?" Matthew asked, dismissing his secretary and leading me into his office. I was so touched by his concern for me and the baby, and felt once again that familiar pull towards him. His kindness was a stark contrast to all the other men in my life, but I could no longer entertain any feelings of weakness hoping to be saved. I had to save myself. "I want you to keep something safe for me." I reached into my back and removed the sewing box, contents still intact. "What is it?" I wasn't sure whether he would be better off not knowing, but I couldn't help myself. I steadied my breath and spoke as slowly as I could. "I don't have much time, but I believe that I have found Sharp Inhale, Emily Bronte's second novel." "Well, not a novel, but a manuscript." "Well, part of it, at any rate." I stood there like a bow, waiting for the arrow to land. It did not. "Did you hear what I said?" "Yes, but I thought she only wrote one novel, Wuthering Heights, wasn't it?" I sighed. It was always difficult to deal with civilians. "Precisely, Matthew. That's what everyone presumed. But I now believed I had proof that she was writing a second. This could change the literary landscape as we know it." He finally began to understand the enormity of the discovery. "Good Lord, Opaline, this is fascinating." "It is," I agreed, shaking my head vigorously. "You're the first person I've been able to tell, but there's something else." "Why are you giving it to me?" Matthew asked. "I'm going away for a while, and it's too valuable to leave it in the shop." "Oh, I see." He gave me a concerned look, reading my expression, no doubt. "You're the only person I can trust." "You're shaking," he said, taking my hands in his. "It's just cold, nothing more." I had to leave. Matthew had his own family to protect. I had to protect mine. I slipped my hands out of his and gave him my brightest smile. "I'll be back for it soon. Just keep it safe until then," I said, and rushed out of the office before I started to cry. I felt so lonely at that moment, but I had to be strong. When I returned home, something still didn't feel right. My books were silent around me, as though holding their breath. I struggled down the stairs to my flat. Had it gotten narrower, or was I simply becoming plumper? It felt as though the very fabric of the building was contracting around me. I needed to sleep. I was so very tired, but I still had to pack. I decided I would just lie down for a moment and drifted off whilst humming to the baby. I woke up to a bright light in my face. Chapter 35, Martha. 1st of February, St. Bridget's Day. I wanted to get out of the house and get out of Dublin. One thing you miss in a big city is the big sky of the countryside. But what I missed most were the storms that would blow in off the Atlantic on the west coast and drown out all the painful voices in your head. It was no day for the beach. The weather was freezing, with actual frost on the window when I woke up, but I was determined. I brought a flask of hot chocolate with me and took the Dart out to Sandy Cove, a small horseshoe-shaped beach. The sun was rising just as I walked past the Martello Tower, casting a pink glow all around. It was beautiful, but also bitterly cold. Thankfully, there was no wind, and the water surface looked calm enough to walk upon. I used to swim in the sea at home, but I stopped when I married Shane. Like so many other parts of my life, it just fell away as though it didn't matter, as though I didn't matter. There were a few other people who had the idea of welcoming the first day of spring with a baptism in the sea. At least it was spring according to the Celtic calendar, making the transition from one season to the next. I stood and watched for a while as some bathers walked purposefully into the water and never hesitated, while others inched their way slowly. I couldn't decide which approach was better. There was no way of avoiding the shock and the pain of the cold. Perhaps it was better to get the hard part over with quickly and reach the exhilaration of having mastered your own senses and the environment. That was why we all were doing this, I thought, to prove something to ourselves, that we could do something so physically uncomfortable in order to feel our own sense of power, or something. I should have felt more powerful now that Shane was gone, but I didn't. I felt numb. I felt guilty. I didn't feel as though good had triumphed over evil. There were no winners, only wounded people picking up the pieces of their broken lives. I would never know why Shane came into my life, why I was fated to live that experience. I often wondered if there was something I had done wrong to deserve it. But in my book, A Place Called Lost, the author believed that every hardship in life was a key to some greater understanding. And it was up to you if you chose to use it to unlock the future or bolt the door. I inhaled deeply and looked out towards the horizon. The tips of the gray clouds glowed peach, and the freezing water was mercurial, save for a golden strip that sparkled in the sunlight. I didn't want to bolt the door. I wanted to open it. I unbuttoned my coat and pushed off one boot and then the other. I kept undressing as though hypnotized by the view, and I walked like one of those purposeful people straight into the freezing water. I never hesitated. I kept going, emitting occasional squeaks of disbelief. Could it really be this cold? Squeak. Am I really doing this? Squeak. Will I keep going? Squeak. When the water reached my bum, I thought I would scream like a banshee, but somehow that squeak only happened internally. The moment had come. Momentum carried me, and I dove down into the blue, my arms powering through the water and my legs kicking. I didn't stop until my blood was pumping loudly in my ears and I felt a little less like dying. Wow, I shouted eventually, spotting an older man swimming nearby. Yeah, a bit chilly, he said with a wink. Just a bit. I was treading water, looking back at the little cove where more people were arriving and undressing. One person in particular caught my eye. He was pushing his hair back off his face and stamping his feet to beat away the cold. I didn't hesitate. I began swimming back and strode out of the water to where he stood and walked straight into Henry's arms. He unzipped his jacket and pulled me in, wrapping me up tight. For the first time I could remember, I felt as though I was exactly where I wanted to be. I lifted my head, and without even opening my eyes, my lips found his. The warmth of his mouth was so inviting and soft that I almost forgot we were on a public beach. I just wanted to be with him, then and there. You taste salty, he said. I just smiled at him and reached my hand up to his jaw, letting my fingers run along his stubble and the dimples in his cheek, as though I were mapping out the territory of my new home. I kissed him again, and when I opened my eyes, it was snowing. I've never been on a beach when it's snowing, I said, suddenly feeling the cold again. It's so beautiful. Beautiful, he said, never taking his eyes off me. He held my towel around me while, with as much awkwardness as is possible for one human being, I tugged off my damp swimming costume and forced my arms and legs back into my clothes. I could feel him staring at my back, but he never said anything. How did you know where to find me? Madame Baum told me you were at Joyce's tower. Joyce's tower? Henry pointed back towards the round tower behind us. The stone now turned gray with snowflakes all around. That's what I wanted to tell you. Sylvia Beach was here. There was a museum inside, and she came to Dublin to open it. She met with Opaline. His excitement almost broke my heart. Was that the only reason he had come back? For Opaline in that damn manuscript? I stepped back from him and shook my head in disbelief. How stupid I was to think that he was here for me. I stuffed my towel into my bag and sprinted towards the stone steps to get back to the train. One was just arriving, and I jumped on it before he had a chance to catch up. I saw him shouting and waving as the train pulled away, but I couldn't understand, although I knew too well what rejection felt like. Chapter 36, Henry. I got very, very drunk. I was having a dream about Isabel. She was extremely cross about something and kept shouting at me to wake up. I tried to ignore her. I didn't want to wake up. Then her accent changed to a thick Dublin brogue. "Are you all right there, love?" And the woman in front of me, said the woman in front of me. She was kneeling on the ground, which must have meant I was on the ground too. I rubbed my eyes wide. No, it wasn't a dream. I didn't recognize her. She had dark hair and was wearing a puffy jacket, which seemed strange. Had I fainted? That was when I became aware of the sound of the traffic. I was outside on the street, lying in a heap of rubbish. "Where am I?" I asked. "Thank God. Will I call you an ambulance?" "What? No, of course not." I attempted to get to my feet, but as soon as I moved, I felt a splitting headache over my right eye. Instinctively, my hand went to touch it, and when I felt a dampness on my fingertips, I realized I was bleeding. "He looks fairly battered, doesn't he, Marie?" Great. I had an audience. I tried to retrace my steps, but all I found were blank spaces. Why was I feeling so unbelievably ill? I heaved myself upright against the steps beside me. The smell of drink off him, I heard the woman say, like a brewery. Oh God, that's when it all started coming back to me. The pub, the whiskey, the blokes who came in to celebrate their friends last night as a bachelor, the bet that they could drink me under the table, the whiskey, the sing-song. Had I sung Molly Malone, standing on a chair? Oh God, smoking a joint with someone outside on the street? Then some other people, they thought he owed them money. Me explaining I'd only just met this guy. Then the punch in the face, the rubbish bin being dumped on me, repeatedly. Thank you, ladies. I think I'll be perfectly fine in a minute. Just need to get my bearings. I groaned as I held onto the railings and stood swaying, adjusting to the daylight. Are you sure, love? I wasn't really sure of anything. When I returned to the B&B, Nora's husband, Barry, had told me how Martha had called by looking for me. He told her I had packed up and gone home to England. The idiot! If only his wife had been there, she would have told Martha I was coming back. And now she wanted nothing to do with me. I'd upended my entire life to be with her, and now she wouldn't even see me. I took a few tentative steps, wincing with the effort. I looked up and saw the street sign. Hawpenny Lane. I was right outside her house. I didn't know what to do. I couldn't show up looking like this, and besides, she made her feelings abundantly clear. The decision was taken out of my hands when I saw her pulling the curtains at the front window. She looked out, disbelieving, and bent down to get a better look. Then her hand went to her mouth. I tried to wave with my good hand. She disappeared back into the shadows and reappeared at the front door. What in God's name has happened to you? I believe I had a disagreement of sorts. She gave me a look of pity, which, under these circumstances, I was willing to accept. She brought me inside and down the steps to the kitchen at the back of the house. She pulled out a chair for me at the kitchen table and then searched in a cupboard for some first aid paraphernalia. How did you end up here? Honestly, I have no idea. I might have been slightly inebriated. She arrived back at the table with a bowl of warm water, cotton wool, a tub of some odd-smelling cream, and plasters. Neither of us spoke while she went about her work. I let my eyes close and permitted myself, for these moments at least, to imagine that everything was okay, that she did still have feelings for me, that somehow it would work out. Will I live? I asked sheepishly as she began to clear the things away. It was torment to watch her lithe figure in simple leggings and a t-shirt, imagining how good it had felt when she was in my arms on the beach. I ached to hold her again. She looked back at me from the sink with a welcome grin. I think so. Thank you for all of this, I said. It's nothing. I've had practice. I didn't know what to say about her husband's death, about any of it, so I did what we field men did best. I changed the subject. You know, before you came, I used to stand out there for hours, I said, gesturing up to the bare patch of land just visible from one of the kitchen windows. I used to think that maybe I'd find some kind of clue, an imprint of the building, like when there's a drought in the summer and farmers find crop circles on the land. I don't know. I was just so sure. I wonder if people are like that, she said, sitting back down at the table. I shook my head in bewilderment. Like, if you can still see the outline of who they were, before? Wow, I don't know. I hope so. I took her hand in mine, and for a moment she let me hold it before pulling it away. I'm sorry, Henry, but I just can't. But if only you got my note, or if that idiot at the B&B had told you I was coming back. It doesn't matter now. Madame Bound explained about the note, but it's not even about that. I can't risk this. She pointed to the space between us, whatever it was. I have to find my crop circles. I smiled. Only she could make breaking my heart sound so charming. I had to respect her wishes. God knows her husband hadn't, yet I didn't have the strength to get up and walk out there without her. And I know you'll find your manuscript, she said with a sadness in her voice. You'll tell me if you do, won't you? Of course, I said, remembering that I still had a printout of the letter from Opaline in my pocket. Actually, I'd wanted to show you this, I said, taking it out. I explained how I had contacted Princeton to search through Sylvia Beach's archives, just as she had suggested. It's thanks to you, really. I handed it to her. She read the last paragraph aloud. Thank you once again for taking copies of my book with you. After all those days stocking the shelves at Shakespeare and Company, it's assuming to think that my book will be there now too. Maybe one day she will find me. She wrote a book? She asked after some moments had passed. Sounds like it, but the real question is, what happened to her? Okay, we left off on page 267, chapter 37. Where did I put that piece of paper? Oh, here it is. So guys, I really like it. We're getting down to the end. So it's all going to come full circle, obviously. The book has to. And I'm actually wanting to read more of hers, but we have a book to read after this one. I really think this is a good book. And it's so, like, I can't explain. It's so different from anything I've ever read before. I've never read anything even close to this. And reading bestsellers will broaden your horizons to something different. Because if you stick to one kind of literature, that's all you know. You know, if you open your mind and all that stuff, you open a whole another level of life, I feel like. Because reading is relatable. It's usually and I had no idea what this book was going to be about, what the characters would go through, but it's very relatable to my life, and I know it's very relatable to a lot of yours. And there's some hard points in this book that it talks about, like alcoholism, abuse, and things like that. But everyone at least knows someone that's been through those things. And it's the realism in this book with the just attention magic. I really do like that. Because if a book's not really relatable, it's not as interesting, I guess, if you can't relate to the characters in it. But thank you guys for being here again. I'm so sorry it took me a while to get back into the reading every day, but I'm back and I'm really enjoying it, guys. There might be a day or two where I don't. Unfortunately, that happens. Life happens, and I hope that doesn't happen, but it may. But I really enjoy doing this with you guys, and it's helping my move a lot, because I get that half hour or whatever to escape reality. But I will see you guys tomorrow, and thank you again for being here.